Viewer discretion is advised for this video, as some of this video may be offensive or disturbing. We, the makers of this video, in no way support or condone the actions of the subjects featured. Have you ever heard of the biggest bomb ever made? Of course, we're not talking about the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, nor are we referring to the infamous nuclear warheads that almost destroyed the world during the Cuban Missile Crisis. No, we're talking about the Tsar Bomba, the biggest nuke ever built, capable of wiping out an entire nation with just one blast. It was so powerful that it literally blew its own testing island to smithereens. Yet despite its sheer destructive capability, it was never used in anger. So what's the story behind this monster weapon? And more importantly, why was it never deployed? Hello everyone, it's me, your average history enthusiast. And today, we're going to look at the deadliest secret weapon ever built but never used, the Tsar Bomba. Before we get into the story of the most powerful bomb ever built, it's important to understand the context of its creation. The Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union was reaching new heights, and both sides were in an arms race to develop the most powerful weapons possible. Nuclear weapons had already been used twice in World War II, and the specter of mutually assured destruction loomed large over any potential conflict. For the Soviet Union, developing a massive nuclear weapon would serve several purposes. First, it would demonstrate their technological superiority and deter the Americans from attacking them. Second, it would help them catch up to the US in terms of nuclear capabilities. And third, it would send a message to their allies and rivals around the world of their growing power. As such, the Soviets invested heavily in research and development of new and more powerful weapons. The Tsar Bomba, also known as the King of Bombs, was the culmination of this effort. With a nuclear payload equivalent to 50 million tons of TNT, it was over 30 times more powerful than the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined. To put this into perspective, if you took every single person on Earth and lined them up shoulder to shoulder, the Tsar Bomba could have wiped out every last one of them. Even more terrifying, it could have been even bigger. Plans for a 100 megaton bomb were considered, and a 200 megaton version was designed but ultimately never built. Now that we've established just how insanely powerful this thing was, let's take a closer look at how it works. The Tsar Bomba was a hydrogen bomb, also known as a thermonuclear bomb, which means that it used nuclear fusion to cause its explosion. Unlike an atomic bomb, which uses nuclear fission, a hydrogen bomb uses the energy released from the fusion of hydrogen isotopes, such as deuterium and tritium, to cause an explosion. This process releases far more energy than fission, and can be amplified by using a device called a radiation implosion device or thermonuclear device. In the case of the Tsar Bomba, 2 stages of nuclear fusion were used to cause the explosion. The first stage used a device called a teller-teller device to compress and heat the fuel for the second stage. The second stage then exploded, releasing an incredible amount of energy. What makes the Tsar Bomba so deadly is not only the sheer amount of energy released, but also the fact that it can be used to trigger other types of weapons. For example, the shockwave from the explosion can detonate conventional explosives or cause buildings to collapse. The intense heat can ignite fires over a wide area, and the radiation can kill or injure people who are exposed to it. So with a weapon this powerful, it's hard to imagine a scenario where it would ever be used. But the Soviets did in fact have plans to use the Tsar Bomba in the event of a war with the United States. Their strategy was based on the idea of using the bomb as a deterrent to prevent the Americans from launching a first strike. If the Americans did launch a nuclear attack, the Soviets would retaliate with the Tsar Bomba. In addition to the massive destructive capability of the weapon, it would also send a message to the Americans that the Soviets were willing to use it. However, there were several problems with this plan. First, the Tsar Bomba was a very big weapon and required a lot of resources to build and deploy. Second, it was not very precise and could not be used to target specific areas within the United States. Third, it was not clear that the Tsar Bomba would actually deter the Americans from attacking. In fact, it could have the opposite effect and provoke them to strike first. Finally, the Soviets knew that using the Tsar Bomba would have devastating consequences for the environment and the health of their citizens. They had seen the effects of nuclear radiation firsthand during World War II and did not want to repeat that experience. In the end, the Tsar Bomba was never used and remains the largest nuclear weapon ever detonated. Instead of using the bomb, the Soviets adopted a policy of flexible deterrence, which involved a mix of nuclear weapons of various sizes and conventional weapons to deter the Americans. This policy proved to be successful, and the Cold War ended without a nuclear exchange. In hindsight, it's clear that the Tsar Bomba was a dangerous and unnecessary weapon. Its development and deployment would have had devastating consequences for the world. It's hard to imagine how any country could justify using such a powerful weapon when there is no guarantee that it will be effective. The story of the Tsar Bomba is a reminder of the dangers of the arms race and the importance of finding peaceful solutions to international conflicts. The development of increasingly powerful weapons does not make us safer. It only increases the risk of accidental or intentional nuclear war. The Cold War was a time when the world came close to nuclear war several times, and the Tsar Bomba was one of the weapons that contributed to that danger. But ultimately, it was the policies of the leaders of the Soviet Union and the United States that prevented nuclear war from happening. The fate of the Tsar Bomba is also a reminder of the human cost of war. The development and deployment of such a powerful weapon would have resulted in the deaths of millions of people, not only those killed directly by the bomb, but also those who died from the long-term effects of radiation poisoning. In conclusion, the Tsar Bomba is a powerful symbol of the dangers of war and the importance of finding peaceful solutions to international conflicts. While it was never used, its development and deployment would have had devastating consequences for the world. The story of the Tsar Bomba is a reminder of the need for countries to work together to reduce the risk of nuclear war and to protect the environment and the health of their citizens. As we move forward into the 21st century, we must learn from the mistakes of the past and work to create a world where such powerful and destructive weapons are never needed again. Thank you for listening to my talk today. I hope that you have learned something new and thought about the importance of preventing nuclear war and protecting our planet. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Deadliest YouTube's fastest growing channel of the history's most shocking facts. Also, if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave them below. I would love to hear your thoughts on the topic, and I will do my best to respond to as many comments as possible. Once again, thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you at my next video.